It must be the grand old party for a reason.
And I think keeping government out of the way of your lives protects the freedom of every one of us.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 Republican stereotypes.
There are jobs out there, and what I'm hearing is it's becoming more difficult to fill those jobs oftentimes.
For this list, we're exploring the typical stereotypes associated with the Republican Party in the United States. These are oversimplified categorizations and more one-sided accusations, and by no means do all of the labels apply to every person that identifies as a Republican.
I believe there is a God. I believe there's a God who is active in the creation process.
We're steering clear of criticism that's leveled at both major parties, whether it has to do with their education or lack thereof, financial responsibility or lack thereof, or the amount of respect they have for the country's history. And don't worry, for the sake of balance, we've got another list for the Democrats.
The Founding Fathers would have supported the war. The Founding Fathers would have protested like us. Support! Protest! Country! Rock and roll!
Number 10. They're old, angry, white Southern guys.
People who look at who's supporting Donald Trump and like to be critical of it say that this is an America that longs for the past, that it's mostly white people who are afraid of losing. Well, you should be.
In the 2016 election especially, the Republican Party has been strongly associated with a seemingly steady supply of angry old white Southern dudes.
That's none of our business.
That's right. It's none of your goddamn business. Right.
Of course, that's the stereotype, but even so, at most GOP gatherings, it won't take long for you to find a grizzled and heavily accented man going to town on the liberals.
Here's the lesson that we should take from this, which relates to this whole subject. Barack Obama became president and he abandoned Iraq.
There's no doubt that such gentlemen may have important points to make, yet their exterior facade and manner of speech can occasionally turn people off. Are all Republicans just a bunch of intense rednecks? Of course not. It's just that the ones we see on television don't necessarily promote a multicultural image.
We're all flush, right? That's what we're going to do to Congress. We're going to flush them.
Number 9. They are against social welfare.
So what happened? I thought you were against handouts. It turns out when it's your $300 million, you love the handouts.
It's been said that Republicans work hard for their money. And when poor folks turn to food stamps, well, the right-wingers don't always nod in approval. After all, it is undeniable that some people do consciously take advantage of the system. And perceived welfare abuse has a tendency to make many Republicans downright nasty.
Guys, our money problems are over. We're officially on welfare. Come on, kids, help me scatter car parts on the front lawn.
When you picture a Republican, chances are you're not picturing them handing out hugs and kisses. You're more likely thinking of one of their supposed rants, which undoubtedly makes for some thrilling YouTube content.
So nobody's getting kicked off of anything. Right. This is all about help.
Of course, not all Republicans hold the same viewpoints, and certainly Democrats sometimes lose their cool as well when discussing the system.
Republicans say these are old ideas on new letterhead, but Democrats say now is the time to actually make these long talked about fixes to Maine's welfare program.
Also, for what it's worth, red states in America receive plenty of federal aid.
The man I married would never think he could fix a problem just by spending money.
Boy, she's pretty pissed, huh?
Yeah, who would have thought welfare fraud to be one of her buttons?
Number 8. They love war.
With the war in Afghanistan over and bin Laden forgotten, the war president had a new target. The American people.
As mentioned, when you picture Republicans, you're probably picturing angry white men sounding off on hot topics, like war. The stereotype is that right-wingers just love them some war, and that doesn't bode well for other Republicans that follow a more peaceful path. So far, history has shown that you're less likely to see many young Democrats on TV advocating the dispersal of American troops overseas.
A future in which war ends and a new chapter begins.
More often, it's a Republican making a steadfast case, whether he or she is supporting it with cold hard facts or appealing to a sense of patriotism. But that's another story.
There, all finished. From now on, this is the pro-war side of town, and that's the unpatriotic side.
Not all Republicans are perpetually calling for war, but when the party agrees that war is necessary, then it's more likely that fellow party members will want to roll with the tide.
Would you go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war?
I would. This is war. If you look at it, this is war.
Number 7, they support traditional gender roles.
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct.
Traditionally speaking, you probably won't see many Republicans sporting I Heart Feminism t-shirts.
This year, Republican women are taking back the future.
And there's a good reason for that. It's because Republicans hate t-shirts. Kidding. But strong feminist views tend to go against the cherished familial values that have been firmly in place for years.
People do, when they hear you say, we need to have more minorities or women in leadership, they hear it as, we need to be less conservative.
Men do the work and women have the babies. Men bring home the bacon and women cook up the bacon as part of a hearty breakfast. Not every Republican abides by a perceived code like this, of course. Yet it's no secret that some gentlemen out there have a certain preconception of how women should behave.
Apparently, sexism is a viable party platform? Who knew?
And when a female reaches the brink of success, there just may be a disgruntled conservative ready to cut her down a bit.
But I do think that when women stand up, for example, and call my candidacy offensive to women, that's about ideology.
Number 6, they are Bible thumpers.
He had to make a decision. What does my faith tell me to do in this situation?
Religion has a prominent place within the Republican Party, and more often than not, it's Christianity in particular. This can be admirable, but sometimes such a public show of religion may seem like it's blurring the line between church and state. Also, like most humans in general, some conservatives fall short of living up to the core beliefs they loudly promote. Of course, nobody's perfect, and sins can most certainly be forgiven.
The Lord's not picking us, but because of how we respect human rights, because that we are a good force in the world, He wants America to be strong, He wants America to succeed, and He wants America to lead.
But there's no denying that sometimes those that thump the Bible the loudest fail to follow the strict set of standards they try to impose upon others.
We need a significantly changed taxation system. And the one that I've advocated is based on tithing, because I think God's a pretty fair guy.
Number 5, they are anti-immigration.
They took our jobs! Yeah, they took our jobs! They did!
In the good old US of A, Republicans have been known to scoff at immigrant culture, and that's putting it politely. The most obvious figurehead for this movement, of course, is Donald Trump.
I have thousands of Hispanics that have worked for me over the years, work for me now. We have thousands, Mexico, all over the place. They're unbelievable people. What I'm saying is they have to come in through a legal process.
The conservatives' rhetoric often involves fear-mongering and finger-pointing, which rejects the very idea that America was built upon: immigration and hard work. Obviously, the world is more dangerous than ever, and not everybody necessarily wants to work hard, so it's impossible to discern the motives of each and every individual.
What do you tell those people that wait in line and have waited in line for years? They did it the legitimate way. They did it the legal way.
However, there's a vast difference between engaging in public discourse and proud, xenophobic boasting.
We need to stop celebrating the absurd in our party.
Number 4, they are homophobic or anti-gay.
I just believe in the unique status of marriage between man and woman.
Since they're champions of blue-collar masculinity and traditional gender roles, acceptance of homosexuality doesn't always sit well with the far right. Despite the presence of Republican groups that support LGBT rights, the public association between the GOP and homosexual discrimination is intense. Anti-gay attitudes on the far right are sometimes so extreme that even the perception of homosexuality can be an issue.
How, either in this universe or any of its infinite parallels, could I possibly embarrass you?
By dressing like a maitre d' on a dinner cruise for gay Republicans?
That's a thing.
In other words, even metrosexuals are homosexuals in the eyes of some conservatives.
You can't just come down here with your mainline, cashmere, mousse, coif, hairspray, and start being like a suburban tool.
Just as many racists deny their racism by saying they have a friend of a different ethnicity, homophobic conservatives do the same on gay issues.
The court has ruled, and I said we'll accept it. And guess what? I just went to a wedding of a friend of mine who happens to be gay.
However, chances are they then lose credibility through public statements that seem out of touch with the times.
Well, listen, I am a constitutionalist, and under the Constitution, marriage is a question for the states.
Number 3, they are anti-science.
Well, I just don't think all the science is in yet. It's settled.
Okay, and what is the overwhelming view of the entire scientific community?
Okay. While liberals don't always get their facts right, conservatives often reject fundamental truths about science outright.
Then you look at the issues that Bush was resistant to scientifically, and they were all traceable to the fundamentalist Christian electorate that helped to get him into office in the first place.
And the issue of climate change in the 21st century is a shining example that highlights the differences between both parties. Less informed individuals may find themselves embracing the official party line rather than partaking in conversation with those in the know.
I'm not planning on writing the curriculum for an 8th grade science book. I'm asking for the opportunity to be President of the United States.
This stereotype is further exacerbated by those Republicans who insist on lending creationism the same credibility as scientific fact, or at least say that it should be taught together with evolution in school. And then, when faced with scientific data on evolution, stem cell research, and of course climate change, or global warming as they still call it, conservatives will sometimes take the "I'm not a scientist" approach, rather than refuting modern scientists with factual evidence.
It is an embarrassment to me that we have a major political party called the Republican Party, which with few exceptions refuses to even recognize the reality of climate change, let alone is prepared to do anything about it.
Number 2, they are pro-life.
I believe that every single human being is entitled to the protection of our laws, whether they can vote or not, whether they can speak or not.
Not every Republican is pro-life, but the party position most definitely is. The political bias for this viewpoint is the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees certain rights to Americans. Many Republicans adhere to a very strict interpretation of the ideas put forth in the Constitution in the 18th century, and the pro-life argument fits in well here.
People like Marsha Blackburn sponsored it. They stewarded it on the floor.
With the same language.
Exact same language.
Yes.
I feel like I'm the only person who remembers this. It was the exact same language, and no one made any issue of it then.
This all gives rise to the stereotype that Republicans are happy to consider fetuses as unborn children and give them rights, while denying the rights of actual living women. After all, women don't always choose to become pregnant, but even so, right-wingers have infamously passed judgment on them anyway. And that is another issue in itself.
On Tuesday, the party agreed to some broad language that basically backs a constitutional amendment protecting, quote, human life.
Before we get to our top pick, here are some honorable mentions.
Now we are at the tipping point. It's much farther along. I mean, Democrats must be thinking, we thought it was going to take 20 years to completely take over the country.
With the idealism and fair play which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world.
America, yeah!
Number 1, they love guns.
I do carry on occasion, sometimes a lot, but I like to be unpredictable.
Since the advent of social media, details on gun-related violence are often spread across the internet in seconds. The presumed Republican response to such incidents, that guns don't kill people, people kill people, is what usually gives the impression that Republicans want their gun rights no matter what.
The issue before us is we need to fix some of the gaps that are in the system.
Of course, Americans have the right to bear arms under the Second Amendment, which is a fact that liberals don't always want to hear. And it's true that some people legally carry weapons to protect themselves, even if they never fire a single bullet in their lifetime. But what fuels this Republican stereotype even more are the conservatives that stock their basements for war or kill animals for the thrill, as opposed to those people that simply adhere to the law.
Many of the places where these mass shootings occur are gun-free zones. So these people who are crazed, but not so crazy as to go into a place where they're likely to get shot, they select these places because they know that they're not going to meet resistance.
Do you agree with our list? What do you think is the most common stereotype about Republicans?
It really was a kill the gays call to arms.
For more mind-blowing top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
We need people with great talent to run our country because our country's in serious trouble. 19 trillion in debt. I mean, you look at everything about it, it's just like trouble.